Well, you've never seen this?
I've never seen this. I've never done a cold read like this before, but here we go. Our guest tonight is like no one you'll ever meet. Among the life experiences on Phil Brakefield's resume are Catholic seminary school dropout. As he says, drummed out of the God Squad. Golden Gloves boxer and professional soccer player who warmed the bench of the Dallas Tornado for several games before the entire league folded. Brahma bull rider in a rodeo once. Major motion picture extra, which you will hear about. Dog rescuer extraordinaire with an impressive number of foster fails. Author of several books, including The Ultimate Hardware Store, The Ultimate Hardware Store Owner's Marketing Guide, and very relevant to tonight's program, The Philly Kid Chronicles, Life, Dogs, and Rock and Roll, which is available after the show for purchase. Runway leg model? You're gonna have to do some explaining, Phil. And Sears catalog underwear model. And I think Phil would appreciate me clarifying men's.
Except for that one time.
Oh, that's another story for later. But the claim to fame that brings him here tonight is a chunk of his life in the late 1960s and mid 1970s when he worked for Concerts West, a concert promotion business that put him in very close proximity to many music icons. Since Phil was the guy who kept things running smoothly behind the scenes, he was also the guy who stayed sober. Thus, he can remember things that happened in those years, which some of the stars alive probably couldn't. Some of Phil's memories are funny, some poignant, and many reveal the human side of some of music's biggest names. Ladies and gentlemen, Phil Brakefield. And joined by the fabulous Sharry Blazier, director of the Elgin Public Museum. Sharry, guys.
Just so you know, Sharry and I used to be a lot closer friends, but when we were putting this together, she said, "You've got to sing something." And I said, "I don't want to sing." And she said, "Oh, you'll be fine." So I don't like her nearly as much as I used to. She's very talented, very talented. I really appreciate you guys coming out. This is so much fun and a little scary. It's way outside of my comfort zone, but we'll take a run at it. This will only work because I can't sing for sure. This will only work if you guys help us out. You have to sing along. Anytime you know the words to anything, just jump in and sing with us. We'll kind of prompt you along, and if you can help us out, you'll thank yourselves actually. So let's try one and just see if you guys can. This crowd looks like it's the right age to know these words. Each time we have a quarrel, it almost breaks my heart, and I am so afraid that we will have to part. Each night I ask, stars up above, why must I be a teenager in love? This is gonna work. We have all your names, and if we take this on the road, you'll get a contract to come along with us and sing. It'll get better if you two can use the same words as everybody else. But it'll be fine. So, well, cool. We're going to start with Sharry's favorite, a little story about my favorite band was Three Dog Night.
No, that's not what we're starting with.
What?
We were gonna start with, look at your book.
I got the wrong thing here.
Get to your music pages, get to your.
Oh, I don't get out much, folks. Is that right?
John Denver, yeah.
Woo! There he is.
I got a couple of really cool stories about John Denver. I was privileged to be around him enough to call him JD, which was kind of cool. There's a theme here as this goes along. I got to call some pretty cool people by their initials or their first name. Couple of cool stories about John. He was a really nice guy, incredible songwriter, very underappreciated guitar player. The guy was unbelievable on guitar, especially 12-string. And early on in his career, he was always that guy who looked like he was really good in algebra with the big glasses and the long hair and all that stuff. Just an incredibly talented guy musically. Athletically, he had a little bit of work to do. When we would be on tour, if we had a day off between shows or something, we would pick up sides and play softball. And of course, John, being the star, was always the captain of one team. And I don't think there's been a worse softball player than he was just awful. And we were playing one time, and poor John, he just would get up to bat, and these guys would try to serve him up a pitch that you could not miss. You could not miss it, and he would miss it by like 20 feet. It just. So one day he had 2 strikes on him. He swings out of his shoes and actually hits the ball and just hits this rope right over the second baseman's head. I mean, it was slammed. And John just stood there like, what happened? So we start, John, run to first. So he took off running, and the guy ran really hard, but he wasn't getting much of anywhere. And he turned what should have been an easy stand-up double into a bang-bang single. I mean, he barely beat that throw out because he couldn't run or hit or throw or anything else. But he just stood there, and all of a sudden he stopped being this superstar with millions of records sold and people adoring him for everything, every breath he took. And he just became like a little kid, and it was so endearing because those big glasses, and he was just looking around, he was just beaming. And I mean, I've always liked John a lot, but I fell in love with him that day because I saw a vulnerable side to him and a really sweet side to him that made him one of the guys. So after the next guy flew out, so it was the end of the inning. But when John came back to the dugout, everybody was patting him on the head. He said, "Good hit, man, good hit." And I know he had never been through that in his life. So it was just a very, very sweet thing to see, and it really changed my perception of him for the better. Just what an endearing memory that is. The other one is, the other story is my boss, a guy named Terry Bassett. Terry went to Stanford on a baseball scholarship, decided he hated school, and he left after one semester, and he teamed up with a guy up in Seattle, Washington named Pat O'Day, and they started this concert promotion company. And so after a couple of years, Terry decided to come to Dallas to start Concerts West, which is where I met him. And Terry was like unlike anybody else that I ever met. But Terry decided that it would be cool. He made a lot of money, and he decided it would be very cool to buy a place between Dallas and Fort Worth, which is where Concerts West was based in Dallas. And he bought this beautiful home on Eagle Mountain Lake, which is about 40 miles north of Fort Worth. Just absolutely gorgeous. It was up on a bluff, and for that day and time, it was just a spectacular home. And his idea was it would just be a place where he could go and relax because that lifestyle is really, really stressful. And after about a month, Terry figured out, genius marketer that he was, that it would be really cool to offer that place to acts that we had on the road if they wanted to take a day off or something. So it was early summer, and he invited some of the peeps from Concerts West over, and JD came in. So there's Denver and a whole bunch of us other ne'er-do-wells, and Terry had this incredible sail or powerboat, and 2 big Evinrudes on the back. And we decided it would be a great day to go skiing because the lake was absolutely flat. It was like glass. no wind, no ripples, no anything. And I'd been trying for most of my life to learn how to ski barefooted. And I thought, well, this is a good day to try that because the water is really smooth and easy and stuff. And so we worked our way down to the boat. JD came along and they fired that thing up and I started trying to ski barefooted. And those guys spent about the next hour watching me bounce across the top of the water like a skipping stone. I just about broke my neck. Everything on me hurt. I could not do it, but I wasn't gonna give up. So I finally got up for about probably 50 yards and I was just so exhausted by then. My legs were like rubber. And I let go of the rope and they had to fish me out of the water. I thought I was gonna drown. And they brought me up into the boat and I was like a landed carp. I was just laying there trying to get my breath and stuff. And I had my eyes closed, and when I finally opened them, have you been to a movie where you see the guy who's the star of the show, he wakes up and he sees like the sun and it's out of focus and everything? Well, I saw that along with this big hat, and it turned out it was JD. And he said, have you ever done that before? And I said, no, and I'm never gonna try it again. And he says, far out. Which was his, that was his trademark, that's what he did. But JD was just an incredibly talented guy. It was so sad when we lost him, and I still carry really fond memories of him. But those two stories especially just so humanized him, and it turned out to be the part of that job that I really liked. It was, you know, you see all the glitter and the rock and the fans and the craziness and the loud speakers and all that stuff. But those guys, the really cool ones, they were like you and me. They were just regular nice folks. And I don't know if they were like you, but they were like most of us. So that's my John Denver stories. Good guy. This is a weird story. Like I mentioned, Three Dog Night was arguably my favorite group of all the ones that we worked with over the years. They were just so incredibly talented. Started by a guy named Danny Hutton who worked for Hanna-Barbera. He wrote advertising jingles. And then he met a guy named Corey Wells who became a dear, dear friend of mine. Corey was from upstate New York, could sing anything, just had an incredible voice. And would rather talk about fishing than music or anything else. He was just a real down-to-earth guy. And then the guy who had the long hair and the big mustache, and the one who kind of lost control over the years was Chuck Negron. And Chuck actually went to college on a basketball scholarship and decided that he liked music better and never did pursue basketball. But the reason you see all these other people up there is that we had the weirdest concert that headlined Three Dog Night back in the day. I think it was '72. It was at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. And that guy with the big beard, and you'll hear more about him later too, his name was B.W. Stevenson, and he was a local musician. Talk about a dude that was snake bit. He released Peaceful Easy Feeling like 2 weeks before the Eagles did, and of course the Eagles just buried him with that stuff. And he also released My Maria, which was later a big hit with Brooks and Dunn. But he, incredibly talented musician, but just very down-to-earth guy. But he was more country. And so I don't know what possessed Terry to do it, but we opened that show with B.W. Stevenson. This was the Cotton Bowl in Dallas in early August, and it was about 5,000 degrees, and everybody was just about to faint. But and then you see Rod Stewart there. Rod was the second guy up that day, and during sound check that day, he and I were on the field at the Cotton Bowl, and I had no idea, but Rod was like, he could have been a professional soccer player. So we had a soccer ball, and we were kicking it around and stuff, and I thought, holy mackerel, this guy can kick a ball through a brick wall. It was unbelievable. And finally, Terry, my boss, said, you know, you might want to cool it because he's either going to kill himself or be too tired to perform tonight. So we eased up on that, but incredible. And that guy, I don't know if there are any fight fans, that guy's name is Jerry Quarry. And I got to fight again right there. And Jerry fought in the era of the killer heavyweights of all time, and he was a really good fighter, but he wasn't that good compared to everybody else that he was fighting against. And his real talent was getting beat up and getting cut. He could do that better than anybody I've ever known. And so after he decided that he'd been beat up enough, he knew the Three Dog Night road manager, and he talked the road manager into hiring him as security for Three Dog Night. So Jerry was there that day at the Cotton Bowl, and it was maybe an hour before the show when the people were starting to come in and I hear all this ruckus going on. So I walk around to the side of the stage, and there's Jerry, and he's got this kid by his shirt, kind of holding him up. This kid's about this big around, with long hair, looked like the hippie that we all knew back in those days, weighed about 7 pounds, and Jerry's just shaking the guy. And I said, what's going on here? And you have to understand, Jerry had been hit in the head a lot, so he had a low threshold for getting triggered. So this kid was saying, come on, man, I just want to get, the kid was trying to sneak in through a side. That was it. And that happened all the time, and it was just part of the deal. So Jerry's just shaking me. He said, come on, man, really, I'm not trying to hurt anybody, I just want to get into the show. And he says, come on, man, stop. And Jerry says, don't call me man. And the kid says, okay, you're not a man. And I thought, that's the greatest thing I've ever heard. So I said, Jerry, I got this. Look. So I didn't like Jerry at all, and I'm sure he felt the same about me. So I took the kid in front of Jerry, and I opened the gate, and I let him in. Just, oh, here's Jerry. And I survived that. I'm still here. And, but anyway, Jerry was he was a strange banana. But anyway, that concert was it was about as weird as it gets, because there was country, there was hard rock, there was Three Dog Night guys, and but it turned out to be maybe my favorite concert that we ever did, that I was privileged to be a part of. It was just so much fun, and everybody had a great time. The Cotton Bowl probably in the last week got rid of all the grass fumes that were floating around up there. It was, that may have elevated the moods a lot too, but it was just a great show, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And unfortunately, Jerry ended up getting dementia from getting hit so much, and he passed away a couple of years ago. But it's a strange memory to associate with those guys. But Three Dog I absolutely loved. They were just unlike anybody else. And sometimes when we would have them on a junket, we would have a private jet for them, and those three guys, the three lead singers, would be in the back of the plane, harmonizing a cappella, singing gospel music, and it was like, it just gave you chills. It was like, holy mackerel, these guys were really unbelievable. They can sing anything, but that whole gospel thing was just another whole thing that you would have never associated with them in a million years. So a lot of fun with those guys. So, by the way, Joy to the World, which you guys were so good on, that was written by Hoyt Axton, whose mother wrote Heartbreak Hotel, and Joy to the World was the only song Three Dog Night recorded that the whole band sang on. Everybody sang on that song, and I don't know why they chose to do it, but they did. And the song almost didn't get recorded because Corey hated it. He did not want to do that song at all, and all the other guys kind of forced him into it. And this is a cool thing too. Terry, my boss, the first time we heard Joy to the World in a show, I said, oh man, that is a number one. And Terry never missed. He had such an ear for that stuff. He said, Philly kid, that ain't gonna fly. I said, I'm telling you, that's a number one song. So I bet him $100 I didn't have, that it was gonna be a number one, and I still have that $100 bill somewhere in my possession. So maybe the only time in my life I beat Terry at anything, but it was kind of a cool thing to do. So, what we got next?
Well, we got a very dramatic song here.
Oh yeah.
You'll all know it. Yes, there were times, I'm sure you knew, when I bit off more than I could chew. But through it all,
you guys just come up here and do this? This is another kind of disjointed story about Frank Sinatra and Muhammad Ali. And you won't believe this, but on this particular night, I actually had something in common with Muhammad Ali. He was scheduled to fight George Foreman in Zaire for the heavyweight champion of the world, the championship. George Foreman was a beast. He just destroyed everybody who got in front of him. And it was towards the end of Ali's career. He was 32 at the time. And people were saying he had lost a step. He wasn't as fast as he used to be. The reflexes weren't there. And people were genuinely concerned that he was going to be killed. I mean, that's how bad a person George Foreman was. He could absolutely kill you if he hit you the right way. And of course, Ali would have none of that. And on that same night that they were fighting in Dallas, Texas, we had Frank Sinatra in concert, and it was part of his main event tour, which was the last major tour that he did, and it ended up in Madison Square Garden up in New York. And Frank was a huge Ali fan too. Ali was like one of my heroes of all time, as was Frank. By the way, Frank, right? Frank, I could call him Frank. Frank. So we were talking about the fight before the concert started, and you have to understand, Frank was a genius, really prickly about his sound and the musicians. I mean, God forbid if you were a musician and you hit a bad note, he could pick it out like that, and man, you would suffer for it. And he hated to be interrupted during a concert, hated it. He didn't want anything to get in the way of the flow of the show. So we're talking about the fight before the show starts, and he says, man, I wish I could see that fight. It was on closed circuit. It was one of the biggest closed circuits ever at that time. So I said, well, you know, we're gonna have somebody at the theater call, and there were no cell phones then, so they would just call in after each round and give us an update of what was going on. So Frank says to me, and Terry was there, Frank says, if you hear anything during the show about the fight, come out and tell me. And I thought, no, I don't want to put my life in danger by messing up your show. So he said, no, it'll be okay, it'll be okay. So he went out there and he was performing, we kept getting updates, and sure enough, 8th round, Ali knocked out Foreman. And so I looked at Terry and I said, you better go tell Frank. He said, no, you go. And Frank was in the round. So I said, man, I don't want to do that. He's going to kill me. So Terry said, it'll be fine. He told you to do it. So I kind of duck walked out there, and I wish I could still duck walk. I think I would never get up again if I tried that. And he saw me on the side of the stage, and he moved over there, and he kind of leaned down, and he raised an eyebrow, and he didn't say anything. I said, Ali knocked out Foreman, 8th round. Frank got this giant grin on his face, turns around, grabs the mic and says, folks, I got something to tell you. And he talked about Ali for like 5 minutes, just riffing on what a brilliant fighter and great human being he was. And right then and there, he changed the show, and he always ended the show with My Way, but because Ali was his hero, that's why he put My Way at this point, because he stopped the show and did My Way right then and there and dedicated it to Ali. And I just thought, man, that was the coolest thing ever. And I survived that one too. So that's what I had in common with Ali. We both survived that night when we both could have been killed. All good. All good. Well, it's knowing that your door is always open and your path is free. That makes me tend to leave my sleeping bag rolled up and stashed behind your couch. You guys know this? And it's knowing I'm not shackled. I've forgotten words and bonds, ink stains that write upon some line that keep you on back roads by the rivers of my memory, keeps you ever gentle on my mind. Glen Campbell's first mega hit just put him on the map. By the way, Glen, I don't know if you guys know this, but he had been one of the mainstays of the Wrecking Crew, which was the group that did all the background for Sinatra and Bennett and the Beach Boys, anybody that you can name that had a record out. The Wrecking Crew was really the musicians that did that, and Glen was very much a part of that. But when Gentle on My Mind and Glen had decided to go out on his own, and by the way, Glen, and keep in mind, I saw Jimmy Page and I saw Clapton and Albert Lee, James Burton, all these great guitar players. Glen Campbell was still, Jimmy Page was great, but Glen Campbell was still all around the best guitar player I was ever around in my life. Incredible. He could play any style, and he just did it instinctively. He didn't, I don't think he read music even, but he could hear something and riff on it and make it even better. But anyway, Glen and I became great partners, friends, and he was such an affable guy, and we're both from the country. He grew up in Arkansas, and I was born in Alabama, and we had that same kind of corn-pone sense of humor that not many people got, and we were just kind of on the same wavelength a lot of the time. And Glen would be playing in front of 20,000 people, and he would start telling stories. And he had writers, and they came up with these great jokes and stuff. And one of the stories that he told was growing up on the farm in Arkansas. His dad raised cattle, and they had a bull that got a little bit older and then lost his step with the ladies. And so his dad was wondering what they could do to get the calf production back up again. And this was probably a precursor to Viagra, only for animals. They found some libido pills, and they started feeding them to this bull, and sure enough, the calves started happening again. So the joke was, Glen said his dad thinks, well, if that worked for the bull, it might work for me. So he started cutting these things up and taking little pieces of them, and after 3 or 4 months, Glen's mom was thinking, what's going on with this? And she figured out what her husband was doing. So she took the pills, all the pills, and she dumped them in the well. And the pills got into the water table, and like 9 months later, there was this population explosion all around the area. That was the original joke. So Glen told it one day, and he came off stage, and I said, man, that's a funny story, but I said, what if instead of you saying there was this population explosion, you said, my mom dumped the pills in the well, and it took 6 months to get the pump handle down. And he thought that was the funniest thing he had ever heard in his life. So he started using that, and I think he forgot my name, because from that day forward, I was Pump Handle. He called me Pump Handle for the rest of our time together. And kind of a cool thing about it, probably been, by the way, Glen was a great golfer too. He had the Glen Campbell Open. I think it replaced the Bing Crosby at one time. But Glen was like a scratch golfer, and I was a pretty good athlete back in the days. And we would go to the driving range, and I thought, man, I can just crush this ball. His ball would still be going up when mine was on the ground. He could just kill the golf ball. But anyway, I hadn't seen Glen probably in 15 years, and I was in Phoenix, Arizona, going up the escalator in the airport, and Glen was coming down, and I saw him. He didn't see me, and I said, Glen, dude, how are you? And of course, I looked very different by then. I had a lot less hair, and put on a few pounds and all that. And he started looking at me, and I could see he's going through the Rolodex. He can't quite, and he gets like right across from me. He says, Pump Handle. So all those years later, I was still Pump Handle with my man Glen, but incredible talent, and unlike anybody else, he could just, and another thing too, he would often have, I don't know if you guys knew Jerry Reed. He was a country guy and guitar player and whatnot. They were dear friends, and they were kind of not competitive, but they appreciated each other's talent with the guitar. And so a lot of times Glen would have Jerry come on during a concert as a surprise guest, but the real show was backstage before the show even started. Those two guys would sit back there and start playing stuff and riffing back and forth between each other, and it made you just want to beat your fingers with a Coke bottle, because they were so incredibly talented, and they would try to top each other, not in a mean competitive sense, but man, oh man, I never heard anything like that in my life. And then they'd go out there and do the show, and that was fine, but The stuff backstage was the killer. That was the good stuff. So that's my Glen story.
That's your Glen story.
And he was kind of good looking too.
Oh, I give my life so lightly for my gentle lady. Give it freely and completely for my lady. Nobody knows it.
We debated about doing that song because it's a Moody Blues song written by a guy named Ray Thomas. This is kind of personal for me. Those guys were so incredibly talented, and they did the big wall of sound in the concerts. They had amps stacked to the ceiling, and that's between them and Led Zeppelin. That's what happened to my hearing. So if I'm going, that's what happened. But the Moody Blues were incredible musicians, each of them in their own right. But Ray was also a writer and a poet, and he wrote for My Lady. And that was the first time in my life I kind of got inspired to try to become a writer. And I'm still taking a swing at it, and I'll never be in that guy's league, but he's the one that lit that fire. And he passed away a couple years ago. Really, really nice man. And like I say, that's just personal. He kind of lit that fire. I know some of the people in this room have my book, and I appreciate you guys doing it. And if you like that book, you should read anything that Ray Thomas wrote, because he's like light years better than I would ever dream to be. So, nice stuff. You do this with me.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. You ain't never caught a rabbit, and you ain't no friend of mine.
I only did a few Elgin shows because Terry ended up finding a guy that for some reason the Colonel absolutely loved. And he could put up with the Colonel's stuff a lot better than I could. And matter of fact, Charles is still he's doing Elvis impersonators now. He still lives in Dallas. But this is a story more about the Colonel than about Elvis. We had Elvis in Tulsa, Oklahoma, again, kind of in the round, and it was in a sports coliseum. And there were seats going up like coliseums are prone to do. And there were two girders that came down from the ceiling to the floor. And the people who had seats behind those girders couldn't see the stage. And they paid, back in those days, what was handsome money for those tickets, probably $10. And so they're sitting there and they start complaining and raising all kinds of hell about not being able to see. So I went and talked to the fire marshals and the security guys, and we got them moved around. And so there's 2 rows of seats going up on 2 sides of the Coliseum. And so before the show starts, the Colonel and I are walking, and the Colonel always had a cane. He carried this cane. And we go by the stage, and he looks up and he sees these 2 rows of empty seats, and he just starts beating the side of the stage with his cane. And I thought, oh man, what is it now? He says, what are those? I said, those were people who had seats, line of sight, they couldn't see, so we reseated them so they could see the show. And he said, well, what are we gonna do about those empty seats? I said, the show starts in an hour, nobody can see. Without a second's hesitation, he said, get on the phone to the radio stations and have them run ads that seating for the blind just became a thing. Yeah. And I thought, oh man. And just so you know, the Colonel, before he had Elvis, he had Eddie Arnold, and Eddie Arnold used to do all the country fairs and the shows and stuff. And so one time Eddie got a bad throat, and Colonel didn't want to give people their money back. So he got a hot plate, set it on low, and put some straw over it, and got 2 chickens and put them on top of that straw, and invited the people in to see the dancing chickens, and they were just lifting their feet not to get their So that was the kind of guy he was, and that's why I didn't like him. It was like, you know, I appreciated the marketing genius, but come on, man. An hour before the show, blind people, I can't get there, but anyway, and I didn't say it, but I thought to myself, it's gonna cost more to produce the ads and get them on the air than you're gonna make for the ticket sale. What are you thinking? But I didn't say it. I kept that to myself. Till now.
Sweet Caroline, good times never seem so good, so good, so good, so good. I've been inclined to believe they never were.
Neil Diamond. We did a ton of shows with Neil, and he was a really nice guy. And did you ever see that Seinfeld show where Jerry gets talked into wearing the pirate shirt?
Yes.
Neil wore those kind of shirts, the big puffy sleeves and stuff, and they were always like blue with glitter on them and stuff. And really affable, fun guy, just wrote so many hits and stuff. But I started noticing on one tour in particular, when people would sing like Sweet Caroline and just take the roof off the place, they'd get done and Neil would say, "Good God, y'all, good God." So I started saying that to him after the shows, or, you know, what'd you think of the show? I'd say, "Good God, man, good God." And then the roadies started picking it up, and everybody, his manager started picking it up, and his manager was a guy named Sal Bonafetti, who was from Brooklyn, who was probably the funniest guy I've ever known in my life, just naturally funny. And he had that Brooklyn attitude and that Brooklyn accent. And so after about 4 or 5 weeks, everybody would say, "Good God, y'all, good God." And so Sal says, "I guess we might as well call this the Good God Tour." But anyway, I hadn't seen Neil in a long time, and I was working with a company up in Milwaukee, and one of the guys' wives who worked at this company I was working with loved Neil Diamond, loved him. So he was coming. It was like Summerfest or something, but he was coming to the city, and I told this guy's the wife, the husband of that woman who liked me so much. I said, "You know, I might be able to call Terry." This was a lot of years after I was through with the shows, but I might be able to get a couple of tickets for you guys. And no one believed that I did that stuff. I mean, you probably have trouble believing I did this stuff, but I really did do this. So I called Terry and I said, "Dude, can you hook me up with some seats?" He ended up giving me like 12 seats in the 3rd row, center cut. I mean, it was just the best seats in the house. And so all these other people from that company went, and none of them believed me ever that I had done that stuff. And so we're sitting there and the show starts, and Neil walks out, and he had those bushy eyebrows, and he always looked like that. And he sees me and he goes like that. And it was like, I'm vindicated. I really did do this. And everybody's going, wow, he really does know that to do. So that was kind of an ego boost, to say the least. So, okay. Let me get set up here.
All right.
Okay. Wasted away again in Margaritaville. Looking for my lost shaker of salt. Some people claim there's everyone to blame, but I know that's what I won't have. Jimmy Buffett, my parrothead hero. We didn't do any shows with Jimmy, but he was really good friends with Terry, my boss. And I used to go down to Austin back in the day, and I'd see Jimmy and Jerry Jeff on stage together doing stuff. Jerry Jeff Walker was a big mentor of his. And there was just this aura about Jimmy. He was the most animated, up-spirited guy all the time, just was always happy and just really smart businessman too. But anyway, Jimmy was getting married, and he called Terry and he said, "Can I borrow your boat?" Sharry kept a boat out on the Gulf of Mexico. And Terry said, "Well, come by the office." This was actually sometime after I was just visiting at the time, but I was sitting in the office and Jimmy came in, introduced himself, and there was an aura about the guy. He just glowed. He was just such a cool dude. So he goes into Terry's office, and they're in there for, I don't know, half an hour, and Jimmy comes back out and he looks at me and says, "Philly kid, I got me a boat." So he borrowed Terry's boat for their honeymoon, and I think Sharry may have found that picture.
We think this is
Yeah.
their honeymoon.
So, but Jimmy, I love all of his music. I have playlists of Jimmy that just go on for days and days. And I went to see him in Alpine Valley a few years ago, and everybody was tailgating and stuff, and he came out, and the crowd was huge. I mean, it just went on forever. And he looked out, and there were people my age, there were middle-aged people, there were little kids, and there were like little kids. And he looked out at the audience and he says, "Damn, I never thought I'd grow up to be family entertainment." Poetic thing to say, Jimmy, you got it, dude. But good dude. Okay.
I don't know if my voice can reach this one tonight.
Make it run it, they'll pick it up. Not many people know this about Elton John. By the way, going back real quickly to Three Dog Night, when Elton wrote your song, he couldn't give it away. And he actually did give it away. He gave it to Danny Hutton of Three Dog Night, and they were the first people to record it. And then Elton decided to do it himself, and that's what launched him. But if you ever have a chance to listen to the Three Dog Night version, it's god awful. It's just awful. But it set the stage for Elton's explosion. Elton is a huge tennis fan. I got a tennis buddy right here, Janet Avampado. She's a big tennis player. And Elton loved to play tennis, and Terry and I used to play all the time. And a company called Onyx came out with the first carbon fiber tennis racket that was ever produced. And so Terry, Mr. Megabucks, went and bought the first one that was sold in the United States, and we gave it to Elton. And right away he wanted to go hit some balls, so I was there, and so I was elected, and we go out to hit golf or tennis balls. And he was actually a surprisingly good player. And of course I still had my trusty wooden racket, which was quite outclassed by the Onyx carbon fiber. But he didn't quite understand the power that new technology generated. And we spent more time chasing balls over the fence than we did actually volleying back and forth. But just incredible, it's surprisingly athletic. I mean, you don't think of Elton John as a guy who can play tennis or sports or anything, but he was really quite good. And I think later in his life, he invested in like the WTA or one of the professional tennis leagues. And, obviously a total genius with his music, but I always enjoy that little story about, there's not many people I know that play tennis with Elton John.
I think I picked the wrong song to sing.
You could have said.
I should have done Racket Man.
But
We'd like to thank you for coming tonight.
be here all week.
Done? Busted flat in Baton Rouge, waiting for a train. Feeling near as faded as my jeans. Probably found a decent town just before it rained. Rode us all the way to New Orleans. I pulled my harpoon out of my dirty red bandana, playing soft while Bobby sang. Windshield wipers slapping time and holding Bobby's hand in mine. We sang every song I tried to do. my folk country heroes, Chris Christopherson, and this is kind of a cool relationship story. This looks weird, I know. I look weird, I know. I lived in Dallas at the time they started casting for Semi-Tough, which was the Dan Jenkins book. And they put an ad in the papers for football players because it's a football themed movie. So I went and tried out, and they had a guy named Tom Fears conducting the tryouts, and he had been the coach for the New Orleans Saints. And I ended up making the quote football team as a defensive back for the movie. And then, as fate would have it, the actual NFL went on strike so they could get real football players too. So, and I was glad of that because they had picked me to be the guy who got decimated so that Chris Christopherson could run in for a touchdown. I was supposed to be the guy that stood there and got hit by 27 guys and knocked into the stands. So anyway, they moved me to being an extra in a parody of the old S Treatment stuff. It was Touch Me and all that good stuff. And so I was part of that group. If you look down there in that corner, that's me at a different time in a different place. A lot more hair, really horrible shirt. I still have the shirt, I think.
What are you? Bottom right.
Bottom right. And if you look way in the back, that guy that's standing up, he's wearing my Blazer. And that Blazer got more screen time than I did. He's the guy that walked around with the mic, getting in front of everybody. And I thought I should have gotten some sort of award for that, but I never heard from the Academy or anything. But so it was Jill Clayburgh, who I absolutely adored. I wanted to have her baby. She was just the sweetest, nicest woman in the world. And she would sit with us peons during the lunches, and they would cater these lunches. They were unbelievable. And she would eat with us and talk with us and stuff. And after a while, Burt Reynolds started coming around some, and Chris really joined the group, and he was just so affable and so nice all the time. And we had a whole lot of fun and enjoyed the music. And we would be talking during these meals and stuff. And I was such a Chris fan. If somebody said something, I would try to take words from one of his songs and throw it into the conversation just to mess with him. And I got him a few times. But anyway, when my part of the movie was over with, this part was filmed at the Adolphus Hotel in Dallas, and I was leaving, and Chris was coming out of this room, and as I was walking by him, I went totally starstruck. I was such a nerd. And I said, man, I really, really love your music, and I appreciate it so much. I said, I know every one of your songs, and I play them all the time, and you're just such an inspiration to me. And very down to earth, he just gave me one of those shots on the shoulder. He says, glad you like them, Hoss. So Chris Christopherson called me Hoss. I'm gonna cherish that forever and ever. But just a really, really nice guy, and what an incredible talent. As we all know, he died about a year ago now, and I'm still glued to his YouTubes all the time. He's just such a great writer, incredible. So that was my claim to fame, and that also convinced me that I never wanted to be anywhere near a movie set again. That's the most painful, boring, make you crazy sitting there job there is. And I really got an appreciation for actors who can sit there for 2 hours while they get the lighting right and all the angles and everything, and they turn it on and they shoot for like 2 minutes, and they turn on the tears or the anger or whatever, and I think, man, those guys are real. I used to think that's not a job, that's easy to do. But that's not the hard part. I think the hard part is just putting up with the setups and the lighting, and needless to say, there's a few egos involved in that stuff too. So not anything I wanted to do, and that's a good thing because no one ever called me to be in a movie again. So it all worked out well. So okay.
Okay, this is a quick one.
Shall I say it?
You shall.
Ginger Baker of Cream was an asshole. Grande. We did the Cream farewell tour, and by that time, those three guys, Jack Bruce, Clapton, and Ginger Baker, hated each other. I mean, hated each other, and that was exacerbated by the fact that Ginger Baker was such a jerk. I've never been around a more unpleasant 24/7 personality than Ginger Baker. He was just implacable. You could not make him happy about anything. And so these guys hated each other, and they got to the point where towards the end of the tour, the last few shows, they started arguing and would spend half hour, 45 minutes when the show was supposed to be starting about who was the biggest star and who should walk out first. And it was like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? We can't do this. So I came up with the bright idea, why don't we sit you guys all down with the curtain down and the lights down, and we'll just bring the curtains up and the lights will go on and you're already in place already, and that way everybody's a superstar and there's nobody that's a bigger star. So that's kind of what we did. And Ginger was, it may have been because of the drugs that he was so unpleasant, but he was just an absolute mess. And you would try to talk to him, and he would just give you these vacant stares. It was like, are you listening to me? Can you hear me? And it was like he was just not plugged in. He was just in some other world. But when the lights did go up and that first chord hit, he was a genius on the drums. I mean, he just could play drums. I always thought John Bonham from Led Zeppelin and Ginger were the two best ones. And I know everybody talks about Ringo and Neil Peart and all those guys, but I'm telling you, Ginger Baker, and interestingly, he grew up as a jazz drummer, but for some reason, he just hit his vibe with that.
Is he the obvious one, the Ginger?
The redhead.
Yeah. Red?
Yeah.
He is the redhead, and then Clapton?
The bad teeth, yeah.
The bad
Yeah.
teeth.
And that's Clapton and that's Jack Bruce in the middle.
Okay, thank you.
But there were times when I didn't think Ginger was gonna be able to even go on stage, but he was just so out of it. And you could, he was really rail thin. I think the drugs made it worse. But sometimes if he wore a shirt like this or short sleeves, you could see his veins. They were like paper thin. It was unsightly as hell. But incredible musician, and he died a few years ago too. But unbelievable. But not my favorite.
Here's a
guy.
band that we don't have a number for because nobody knows.
Yeah.
But see if anybody can name this group. See? This is where your career started to go bad.
Yeah. There was a group out of England called the Soft Machine, and we brought them in to kind of be the opening act for the Moody Blues. And the Soft Machine were kind of like a Spinal Tap band on steroids. They were the most egotistical, not very talented, impossible to deal with guys. And if they looked out and saw empty seats, well, we're not gonna do the show. If it's not a sellout, we're not gonna do it. And it was like, come on, you guys, you're not even the headliners here. Anyway, these idiots, we're in Oklahoma, which is the Bible Belt of the world, even worse back then. And these idiots, the morning of the show, they get busted for having marijuana. And they're put in jail. And I have to go get them out of jail in time for a show. And so I managed to get in front of a judge with my long hair and my irreverent attitude. And I was pleading with the guy. I said, this is a one-stop deal. These guys have no clue about what our laws are. They don't have anything bad in intention here, but can we please just get them out, and we'll get them out of the state. And I begged for the longest time, and the judge finally said, he said, well, I tell you what, boy, if they ever even fly over the state again, they'll never see the sunlight again. So I got them out. And I told Terry after that tour, I said, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to go bailing out non-talented guys, in front of people who don't like me and I don't like them. So I started kind of easing out of the active part of the thing, but Sharry found out, she did some more research on Soft Machine, because I tried to put him out of my mind. But apparently, over the years, a whole bunch of other musicians that we would all probably know at some point or another were members of the Soft Machine. And I don't know.
They had something like 29 members over the years.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
I think Jack Bruce actually, after Cream, went to them for a while.
really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Unbelievable. Yeah, but anyway, that was kind of the beginning of the end of my concert days. I figured there's gotta be a better way to make a living than begging judges in Oklahoma for a break. So, okay, here we go. See, should I try my Willie?
Yeah.
On the road again, just can't wait to get on the road again. My fella's making music with my friends. I can't wait to get on the road again. Willie Nelson's another hero. This is, I told you earlier that I'd be talking about B.W. Stevenson again. And so who you see there's B.W. Stevenson, Leon Russell, Willie, Jackson Brown, and Carolyn Hester. And B.W. was a really good friend of mine, and he called me up one day and he said, let's go up to Leon's place. Leon had a place on the border of Oklahoma and Texas. And he says, there's gonna be some guys up there and we're gonna jam. And so I thought, well, that means I get to drive. So I took B.W. up there, and those are the people that were there when I came in. And of course, you know, Willie's superstar, Jackson Brown, was early in his career, but you could already tell he's just gonna be monster good. Leon had played on everything that there was to play, just incredibly talented musician. And then B.W. and Carolyn Hester were really great friends, and I found out interesting stuff about Carolyn Hester. She was huge in the folk music movement, especially in Texas, but she also went up to Greenwich Village, and Bob Dylan went absolutely head over heels for her. And she also dated Buddy Holly, and when she cut, I think it was her third album, she invited Bob Dylan to play harmonica on it, and that was the first time he was recorded on any record. And incredibly talented woman, and it could have very easily been, instead of Peter, Paul, and Mary, it could have been Peter, Paul, and Carolyn, because they tried to get her to join Peter, Paul instead of Mary Travers, and she didn't want to do it, so that's how Mary Travers ended up with the gig. But anyway, we get up there, and these guys they're just sitting around playing, and they're doing stuff like Home on the Range, and you know, just real country pone sort of stuff. And in there for about an hour, and Leon says, well, I think it's time for some beers. So I thought, well, I drove, so I guess I'll go get the beers too. And so I said, well, what do you guys want? Jackson Brown jumps up and he says, I'll get them, man. And so he gets the beer orders from everybody, and he looks at me and he says, what do you want? And I'm thinking, Jackson Brown is asking me what I want to drink, and I don't drink, so I said, I'll take a double water. And he brought me a double water. But I just thought that was the coolest thing, and one of the really unique experiences of my life at that time in my life, because it was like us sitting here. I mean, we're all just friends shooting the breeze and exchanging stories and singing along and stuff, and that's exactly what that was. There were no huge egos there or anything, and I mean, that was some royalty, and you know, I got to kind of sit and watch that and ask somebody what I wanted to drink. Pretty lucky dude, so, okay?
Okay.
Sharry loves that intro. That's some Jimi Hendrix riff. Kind of cool story about Jimmy. One of the first few concerts I worked were Jimi Hendrix shows, and one night after a show, this was in Dallas, I took him and the other two guys back to the hotel, which is the Stoneleigh, which is this venerable old hotel in Dallas, built in the 20s, and we used to put a lot of the stars there because the groupies didn't know about it and they never did figure out where we kept those people. So we go back to the Stoneleigh and get back up to the suite, and Jimmy says, well, I'm not tired, I want to, is there someplace to get a beer? And so at 19, I'm saying, sure, non-drinker that I am. So we went across the street to this thing called the Stoneleigh P, and the P stood for pharmacy. It used to be a part of the Stoneleigh, but they sold it off and they turned it into kind of a bar, and it was written up in the Texas Monthly as having the best jukebox in the country, and it really did. You could find anything from Glenn Miller to Jimi Hendrix to Creedence Clearwater. I mean, it's just this incredibly eclectic jukebox. So we walk across the street and go in there, and there's like 4 of these raw-boned cowboy dudes sitting there with their hats on and the snap-button plaid shirts, and they got their boots out in the aisle like that. And man, they've had some beers or something. They're on their way. So we kind of wind our way around them, and we sit down, and I start telling Jimmy about this jukebox, and he said, well, go play something. So I think it was dimes then. I think it only cost a dime to play a song, maybe a quarter, but probably a dime. So I got a bunch of change, and I started feeding the jukebox. And just to mess with Jimmy, every song that I played was a Jimi Hendrix song. And these cowboys are sitting there saying, what the hell is that? They just did not understand that at all. And Jimmy's just shaking his head. He says, I can't believe you're doing this. He said, I can't help myself. I just had to do that. So anyway, after a while, these guys they're just getting more and more upset. And finally, this one guy kind of raises up and he says, I don't know who in the hell even listens to that kind of crap. He didn't say crap, but you get it. And I thought to myself, not only do I know who plays this stuff, I know who records this stuff, but I didn't say a word because Jimi Hendrix was sitting right there in the midst of them. And I thought if they knew, they would have probably lynched us all. But we got out of there okay. And one thing about Jimmy, all the stuff you hear about him, the craziness and the drugs and all that, he was the most quiet, mannerly, well-spoken guy that I've ever been around. I mean, he was just always so polite and was more interested in you than his stardom or anything. I remember driving back to that hotel, he would say, well, what are you studying, or what are you doing? I'm like, Jimi Hendrix, is that something what am I studying? I mean, just a really nice, down-to-earth guy. So, great story and a great remembrance, and I wish they had phones and they had cameras, because the look on Jimmy's face when I started playing all his songs, it was priceless. I carry it up here. I wish I could share it with you guys, but there's not much else up there, but there's that. Anyway, so.
In the name of the season, everybody will know.
Yeah, we added this from the last time we did this because of the season.
Feliz Navidad.
Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Prospero año y felicidad.
Nice.
Merry Christmas.
Go ahead.
I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart.
You know what it is. Jose Feliciano, he did something that still gives me chills when I think about it. Again, this was in Dallas. I don't know how can I put this gracefully. Obviously he was blind, obviously an incredible musician, and he always traveled with his wife, but he loved women. He loved the groupies, and he would do things like stand up against a wall and act like he was hard of hearing, so that the women would get closer, and then he could kind of bump into them and get some extra thrills that way. I'm being polite, but that was Jose. but incredible musician. Anyway, we finished the show, and he wanted to go where Kennedy had been assassinated. So put him in the car, he and his wife, and we drove down there, and we're driving along on the street before you turn onto Elm Street, and we've been talking about the show and how well it went that night and whatnot. And when we turned onto Elm Street and started going down by the Texas School Book Depository, I hadn't said a word. His wife didn't know where we were. Jose says to me, "This is it, isn't it?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "This is where he was shot, isn't it?" And I said, "Yeah, it is." And I have no idea to this day what prompted him to know that we were where Kennedy was assassinated. But man, you talk about chills. It was like, I cannot believe that I'm hearing this from this guy, because he really was blind as a bat. But you know, they say that about, you know, guys like Ray Charles and all those blind guys. Their other senses are so tweaked because of their lives and what they have to go through. But I've tried to write about it, and I can't do it justice. I can't tell you about it and do it justice. It's just unlike anything I've ever been around in my life. And I think about those guys, especially, you know, what kind of level does he live at? You know, does he perceive stuff that we mere mortals will never know about, or is he just tuned into stuff that we just don't know about? I don't know, but that kind of convinced me that he was definitely on a different wavelength. Too cool.
Just can't have seen it on TV.
I'm just mad about saffron. Saffron's mad about me. I'm just mad about saffron. She's just mad about me. They call me mellow yellow. They call me mellow yellow. They call me mellow yellow.
Nice. We did a lot of shows with Donovan. And he was like Neil Diamond. He wore the pirate shirts, like, you know, the puffy sleeves and all that stuff. Incredible musician, writer. A lot of people don't know this, but he taught the Beatles a lot of guitar stuff. He's an incredible guitar player. And he would go and sit with the Beatles and teach them guitar riffs. But we had, again, I had so many shows in Dallas, but that's where the headquarters was. So he always traveled with his dad, and we always had to buy a seat on the planes for his dad, but we also had to buy a seat for his guitar. His guitar could not go in the baggage area. It was always his own seat. So we finish up the concert. It was Terry and his dad and Donovan and I, and we go back to the Hyatt in Dallas, and we're going up to the penthouse. And before we get on the elevator, this lady is there. Obviously very well-to-do. Dallas is a very rich town. And she looks at Donovan, and he's wearing this cool shirt. For a pirate shirt, it was cool. And she said, "I just love your shirt. That's just the best looking shirt I've seen in a long, long time." And she got on the elevator with us, didn't go all the way to the penthouse, but it started the conversation while we were on the elevator about favorite clothes that we all have. And he talked about he loved that shirt so much, and Terry talked about these jeans that he always wore, and everybody had a favorite article of clothing. So we get up to the penthouse, go there, everybody's starting to relax. Donovan grabs his guitar and goes to the bathroom, and he's gone for about 20 minutes, and we're hearing stuff out of the bathroom this whole time. So 20 minutes later, he comes out and he says, "Hey, you guys, listen to this. What do you think?" And he played a song called "I Love My Shirt." He wrote "I Love My Shirt" in the crapper, ladies and gentlemen. And we all just thought, and it's all about clothes that you like and stuff that you just wear all the time. So he decided to try it the next night. We had him in Houston, brought the house down, and it ended up being on his Brabbajago album, I think, and he actually performed it on the Smothers Brothers show too. So very few people know that originated in an elevator in a bathroom. Kind of a cool story. So,
So we're gonna close the show by singing the song.
Sherry loves this.
Do you have a shirt that you really love? One that you feel so groovy in? You don't even mind if it starts to fade. That only makes it nicer still. I love my shirt. I love my shirt. My shirt is so comfortably lovely. I love my shirt. I love my shirt. My shirt is so comfortably lovely. When they're taken to the cleaners, can't wait to get home again. Yes, they take me to the cleaners. I'd rather wash them in a stream. Rather wash them in a stream. You know what I mean? I love my shirt. I love my shirt. My shirt is so comfortably lovely. I love my shirt. I love my shirt. My shirt is so comfortably lovely.